The courtroom fell silent as my daughter Lily raised her small hand. "Your Honor, can I show you something my mom doesn't know about?" she asked, her voice steady despite being only 8 years old. My parents glared from across the aisle, alongside my smug sister Amanda, who was already measuring the windows of my home for curtains. I wanted to object, but something in Lily's eyes stopped me. The judge nodded, and my daughter pulled out her tablet. As she pressed play, the color drained from my parents' faces. "My name is Drew. I am 34 years old, and for the past 3 years, I have been raising my daughter Lily on my own after my wife Jessica passed away from cancer. When we first received the diagnosis, Jessica was only 31. The doctors told us she had maybe a year left. She fought for almost 2, but in the end, cancer took her away from us, leaving me alone with our 5-year-old daughter. The house we live in has been in our family for generations. My grandparents left it to me in their will, with one specific condition: that I would raise my family there, continuing the legacy they had built. They always had a special bond with me, their first grandchild. I spent every summer with them growing up, helping Grandpa with the garden and listening to Grandma's stories about our family history. When they passed away within months of each other 6 years ago, I was devastated. The inheritance of their home came as both a blessing and a responsibility. The house was structurally sound, but needed significant updates. For 5 years, I poured every spare dollar and weekend into renovations. I replaced the outdated electrical system, installed new energy-efficient windows, renovated the kitchen, and transformed the backyard into a space where Lily could play safely. I did most of the work myself, learning from YouTube videos and advice from the guys at the local hardware store. Every nail I hammered, every wall I painted, was done with love and the intention of creating a forever home for my family. Our life settled into a comfortable routine. Weekday mornings start with breakfast together before I drop Lily off at Lincoln Elementary, where she is in 3rd grade. I work as an architectural draftsman at a small firm in town, which gives me enough flexibility to pick her up after school most days. Evenings are filled with homework, dinner, and our special tradition of reading together on the porch swing that Grandpa built decades ago. My relationship with my parents, Margaret and Thomas, had always been complicated but cordial. They live across town in a beautiful home they built 20 years ago. My sister Amanda is 4 years younger than me and has always been the apple of their eye. While they attended every soccer game and dance recital Amanda ever had, they often missed my events due to prior commitments. I accepted this dynamic long ago and maintained a respectful relationship with them, especially for Lily's sake. She deserves to know her grandparents, even if they sometimes fall short of what I wish they could be. Amanda recently finalized her divorce from her husband of 8 years. They had no children, and she walked away with a decent settlement, including their condo. Yet something changed in my family's dynamics after her divorce. Amanda began talking constantly about wanting a fresh start and how difficult it was to maintain her lifestyle on her income as a real estate agent, particularly with the housing market cooling down. I noticed my parents started making odd comments during our monthly family dinners. They reminisced about how my grandparents always wanted to keep the house in the family and questioned whether such a large home was practical for just Lily and me. I dismissed these comments, thinking they were just making conversation. Then came the day that shattered everything. I was at work, reviewing blueprints for a new client, when my phone rang. The receptionist said someone had delivered papers that required my signature. When I opened the envelope in my office, I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. My own parents were suing me, claiming the house was actually theirs, and seeking to evict me and my daughter. The reason, stated in black and white legal language, was to rectify an imbalance in family assets and ensure equitable distribution of property among siblings. My hands shook as I read through the document again. This couldn't be real. My parents were trying to take away our home to give it to Amanda. That evening, after making sure Lily was occupied with her homework, I called my parents, hoping there had been some terrible misunderstanding. My mother answered, her voice casual, as if she hadn't just dropped a legal bomb into my life. "We need to talk about these legal papers," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Yes, we figured you would call," she replied. Your father and I think it would be best to discuss this in person. Why don't you come over tomorrow evening? Amanda will be here too. The next night, I arranged for Lily to stay with her best friend Zoe, so she wouldn't have to witness what I suspected would be an unpleasant conversation. When I arrived at my parents' house, Amanda's car was already in the driveway, a sleek new model that hardly looked like someone struggling financially. They were sitting in the living room, drinking wine, looking for all the world like they were hosting a casual social gathering rather than a family implosion. My father, always the businessman even in retirement, took charge of the conversation. Drew, we know this comes as a surprise, but we've been thinking about family assets for quite some time, he began. The inheritance was never officially finalized, my mother interjected. There were discrepancies in the paperwork. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's not true. Grandpa and Grandma were explicit about their wishes. I have the will, the transfer documents, everything. I've been paying the property taxes and insurance for 6 years. Well, there are technicalities, my father said vaguely. Our lawyer believes the house should actually be considered family property, with your mother and I as the rightful inheritors. We simply want to redistribute family wealth more equitably. I looked at Amanda, who was examining her manicure with feigned disinterest. And you're okay with this? Taking away your niece's home? She finally met my eyes. I deserve a fresh start, Drew. You've had advantages I never had. Besides, you and Lily can find an apartment. Lots of people rent. It's not the end of the world. My mind flashed back to the day of my grandparents' will reading. Grandpa's voice had been clear when the lawyer read his final wishes. To my grandson Drew, who has always appreciated the value of home and family, I leave our house on Maple Street. May he raise his children there, with the same love that filled these walls during our time. There had been no ambiguity, no confusion. This is insane, I said. You know as well as I do that Grandpa and Grandma wanted me to have the house. They told everyone for years before they passed. Verbal statements aren't legally binding, my father responded, his tone infuriatingly calm. And families should support each other equally. Amanda needs this opportunity more than you do right now. Over the next few weeks, the situation only deteriorated. I consulted with a lawyer who confirmed that my documentation seemed sound, but warned that family property disputes could be complicated and expensive. Meanwhile, Amanda began showing up unannounced at our house, claiming she needed to get measurements and assess what furniture would work in the space. One Saturday afternoon, I came home from taking Lily to her swim lesson to find Amanda in our living room, photographing our furniture and making notes on her phone. "What are you doing?" I demanded, blocking Lily from entering the room. "Just documenting what's here. Some of this might actually work with my decorating plans," she replied, as if it were perfectly normal to inventory someone else's possessions. "You need to leave. Now." I pointed to the door, fighting to control my temper with Lily watching. "Fine, but I'll be back with Mom and Dad next week. We need to discuss which appliances stay with the house." She brushed past me with a smirk. After she left, Lily looked up at me with worried eyes. "Is Aunt Amanda going to take our house, Daddy?" I knelt down to her level, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. "No, sweetie. This house is ours. Grandpa and Grandma wanted us to live here." But that night, Lily had the first of what would become frequent nightmares, waking up, crying that she couldn't find her room. The security of the only home she'd ever known was being threatened, and she could sense it despite my attempts to shield her. In a desperate attempt to resolve the situation, I invited my parents and Amanda to dinner, hoping to appeal to their better nature. I spent all day preparing my grandmother's famous pot roast recipe, setting the table with care, and even putting together a reasonable proposal. I would help Amanda with a down payment on a different house, even though it would deplete my savings. They listened politely as I outlined my offer, but their expressions remained unmoved. "That's very generous, Drew," my mother said, "but we've already made other arrangements." "What arrangements?" I asked. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Amanda has already sold her condo. The closing is next week." "Where is she planning to live?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. Well, here, of course, Amanda replied. Once everything is settled legally, I've already given notice at my apartment. There's no going back now. The reality hit me like a physical blow. They had planned this so carefully, creating a situation where Amanda would have nowhere else to go, adding pressure to resolve the case quickly in their favor. As they were leaving, Amanda paused in the doorway. Don't worry too much, big brother. I might let you take some of the furniture when you move out, as a gesture of goodwill. That night, after Lily was finally asleep, I sat on the porch swing, the same one where I had spent countless hours with my grandparents, and let myself cry for the first time since receiving those legal papers. The legal battle intensified as weeks passed. My parents hired Wilson Matthews, one of the most expensive attorneys in the state, known for his aggressive tactics in property disputes. Meanwhile, I struggled to keep up with the mounting legal fees for my own representation. My lawyer, Sarah Brennan, was good but clearly outmatched in resources. I need to be honest with you, Drew, Sarah told me during our third meeting. The case isn't as solid as we initially thought. There's some ambiguous language in your grandparents' will that their lawyer could exploit, and your parents have significant resources to drag this out. I had already taken a small loan against my retirement account to pay her retainer. The thought of prolonged legal proceedings made my stomach churn. What are our options? We continue fighting, but you should be prepared for this to get worse before it gets better. Family court judges can be unpredictable in these situations. Outside the legal arena, my parents launched a campaign of emotional manipulation that left me reeling. They began contacting extended family members and old family friends, spinning a narrative that I was being selfish and unreasonable. My cousin Ryan called me one evening. Dude, what's going on with you and your parents? Aunt Margaret says you're refusing to help Amanda after her divorce trauma. That's not what's happening. I tried to explain the situation, but could tell from his tone that he had already formed his opinion. Similar conversations played out with other relatives and friends, many of whom began treating me with a new coolness. I was being portrayed as the villain, while Amanda was the victim who just needed family support during a difficult time. The psychological warfare extended to our home itself. Amanda began driving by several times a week, sometimes parking outside just to stare at the house. When I confronted her, she claimed she was just getting ideas for renovations. During a particularly tense family dinner at my parents' house, one I only attended to maintain some semblance of normalcy for Lily's sake, I noticed something disturbing. All the old family photos that had included me were mysteriously absent from the walls. When questioned, my mother claimed they were being reframed. Yet pictures of Amanda remained prominently displayed. Amanda took every opportunity to discuss her renovation plans within earshot of Lily. I'm thinking of turning that small bedroom into a home office, she said casually over dessert. The one next to Lily's room. That's my playroom, Lily whispered, pushing her ice cream away untouched. The stress began affecting Lily at school. Her teacher, Mrs. Peterson, requested a meeting after Lily burst into tears during a lesson about family homes. Lily mentioned something about having to move, Mrs. Peterson said gently. She seems very anxious lately. Is everything okay at home? I gave her a simplified version of our situation, and she promised to provide extra support for Lily at school. But I could see my daughter withdrawing more each day, her usual bubbly personality dimmed by constant worry. Other family members began pressuring me as well. My Uncle Steve, my father's brother, called to suggest I take the high road. Just find another place, Drew. For the good of the family. Why cause all this trouble? Because it's our home, I replied. Would you give up your home if someone suddenly demanded it? The conversation ended awkwardly, with another family relationship strained. The most shocking revelation came through an unexpected source. My grandparents' longtime neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, stopped by one afternoon with a casserole for the family during this difficult time. As she was leaving, she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. I never understood why your parents are doing this now, especially after they signed those papers years ago, acknowledging the house was yours. What papers? I asked, my heart racing. Oh, I thought you knew. About a year after your grandparents passed, your parents came over with some document. They were upset, saying something about how the house should have gone to both children equally. But in the end, they signed whatever it was. I remember because they asked to use my notary stamp, but I had let it expire. This was the first I'd heard of any such document. When I asked Sarah to investigate, she discovered that my parents had indeed signed an acknowledgement of the inheritance transfer, waiving any claims to contest the will. They were now claiming they had been pressured into signing it during their period of grief. This is good for us, Sarah assured me. It shows they previously accepted the validity of the will. But they're claiming duress, which complicates things. The revelation that my parents had known all along the house was legally mine, but chose to pursue this case anyway, felt like the deepest cut yet. This wasn't about legal misunderstandings or family equity. This was a calculated decision to take something they knew belonged to me and my daughter. As the court date approached, the constant stress began taking a serious toll on my life. At work, I found myself making careless errors on drawings that would have been unthinkable before. My boss, Dan, called me into his office after I submitted plans with significant measurement discrepancies. "Drew, is everything okay? This isn't like you." I broke down and explained the situation. While sympathetic, Dan was also running a business. "Take some personal time if you need it," he offered. "But I need to know I can count on you. We have deadlines to meet." Sleep became elusive. Most nights, I would lie awake worrying about our future, mentally calculating and recalculating our dwindling finances. When I did sleep, I had vivid dreams of being locked out of our home, watching through the windows as Amanda threw Lily's belongings onto the lawn. I tried to hide my anxiety from Lily, but children are perceptive. One morning she asked, "Daddy, are you sick? Your eyes are always red." "Just tired, sweetheart," I assured her. But her worried expression told me she wasn't convinced. Amanda escalated her psychological warfare. She started showing up at school events, where she had never shown interest before, positioning herself as a concerned aunt. After one such appearance at Lily's school concert, my daughter came home confused. Aunt Amanda told me my room would look prettier in purple, but I like it blue because it reminds me of the sky. "Will I have to change it?" I reassured her, but the constant undermining of our security was wearing us both down. The most disturbing discovery came when Lily mentioned offhandedly that Grandma and Grandpa had been taking her for ice cream after school on Wednesdays, when I thought she was at her after-school program. "They said not to tell you because it was our special secret," Lily explained innocently. "They said when we move to our new apartment, they'll visit more often because Aunt Amanda will let them come any time." The revelation that my parents were secretly meeting with my daughter to manipulate her about our living situation felt like a violation beyond forgiveness. That evening, I called them in a rage. "How dare you go behind my back to confuse Lily about our home situation? She deserves to know the truth," my mother replied calmly. "That changes are coming. Changes you're forcing on us. You're deliberately trying to upset her. We're preparing her for reality," my father interjected. "Something you seem unwilling to do." My best friend Jake, who had watched this nightmare unfold over the past months, offered his guest room as temporary housing if we needed it. "You and Lily can stay as long as necessary," he insisted. "Charlotte and the kids would love having you both." His kindness was a bright spot in the darkness, but the thought of leaving our home, even temporarily, felt like admitting defeat. The financial strain of the ongoing legal battle forced me to make difficult decisions. I canceled our planned summer vacation, sold my collection of vintage architectural books, and even considered selling my car for something cheaper. Every penny had to go toward fighting for our home. Sarah called with news that further dampened my hopes. "The case is looking increasingly difficult. Your parents' legal team is pulling out all the stops, including character witnesses who will testify about your grandparents' supposed verbal statements regarding family property." "But that's all fabricated," I protested. "I believe you, but it creates reasonable doubt. We should consider settlement options." The settlement offer from my parents came the next day. $20,000 to vacate the property within 30 days. The amount wouldn't even cover a down payment on a comparable home in our area, and Lily would have to change schools mid-year. "This is insulting," I told Sarah. "It is," she agreed. "But we need to be realistic about our chances in court." I was contemplating the impossible choice when Jake invited me to a barbecue, insisting I needed a break from the constant stress. While there, his father-in-law Tom, a retired history professor with an interest in genealogy, mentioned something that caught my attention. "You know, I helped your grandfather research your family history about 10 years ago. He was so proud of that house, always said it would go to you someday. My parents are trying to claim he never intended that," I said bitterly. Tom looked surprised. "That's strange, because I distinctly remember there was some disagreement back then. Your parents actually tried to contest your grandparents' will planning before they even passed away. Something about ensuring Amanda would get an equal share." "What? They contested the will before my grandparents died?" This was news to me. "They didn't go through with it. They withdrew the challenge when your grandfather threatened to cut them out entirely. I always assumed they made peace with it, especially after you married Jessica. Your grandparents were so happy about that, said the house would have a new generation to love it." This revelation cast the entire situation in an even more disturbing light. My parents had been planning this betrayal for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. They had only backed down originally when they thought I would marry someone they approved of, perhaps hoping to maintain influence over the property through that connection. The knowledge that their current claim of being pressured into accepting the inheritance was not just a lie, but part of a long-term scheme made me physically ill. I excused myself from the barbecue and spent the next hour sitting in my car, trying to process this new level of betrayal. That night, I found old videos of Jessica in the house during her final months. In one particularly poignant clip, she sat in the garden, Lily on her lap, pointing out butterflies. "This garden is magical," Jessica said weakly. "I'm so glad you'll grow up here, sweet pea. The house has good memories in its walls." Watching that video, I knew I couldn't give up without fighting with everything I had, no matter the cost. The eviction hearing was scheduled for June 15th, just 2 weeks away. The date loomed like a guillotine blade ready to drop. Every morning when I woke up, the first thought in my mind was a countdown. 14 days left, 13 days left, 12 days left in our home. The immediate threat of homelessness created a palpable tension that filled every room. I began secretly packing some of our most precious items. Photo albums, Jessica's jewelry for Lily when she got older, family heirlooms that couldn't be replaced. Each item I carefully wrapped and boxed, felt like admitting defeat. But I couldn't risk losing these connections to our past if the court ruling went against us. One evening, Lily found me in the attic, sorting through Jessica's belongings. She stood in the doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit that Jessica had given her on her last Christmas. "Are we really going to lose our house, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small. I wanted to protect her from the truth, but I had always promised never to lie to her. "I'm fighting as hard as I can to keep it, sweetie. But we need to be prepared, just in case." Her face crumpled, and she launched herself into my arms, sobbing against my shoulder. "But this is where Mommy was. If we leave, I might forget her. I already can't remember what her voice sounded like sometimes." Her words broke something in me. I held her tight, my own tears falling into her hair. "We'll never forget Mommy, no matter where we live. She's in our hearts, not just in this house." But even as I said it, I felt the unique pain of potentially losing the space where Jessica had lived her final days, where every room held echoes of her laughter, her voice, her presence. The house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was the largest physical connection to Jessica that remained in our lives. Lily's breakdown prompted a meeting with her therapist, Dr. Michaels, whom she had been seeing occasionally since Jessica's death. "Lily is experiencing this potential move as a second profound loss," Dr. Michaels explained gently after their session. "In her mind, leaving the house means leaving part of her mother behind. The timing is particularly difficult because she's at an age where some memories of her mother are naturally beginning to fade. The house serves as a physical anchor for those memories. What can I do? I asked desperately. Continue being honest with her, but focus on what won't change. Perhaps create memory books or videos of the house. And if you do have to move, try to bring elements of this home to the new place. The same bedtime routines, familiar furniture arrangements, the rituals you've established together. Her advice was sound, but did little to ease the ache in my chest when I imagined Lily growing up without the security of the home her mother had helped create. The situation deteriorated further when Amanda took advantage of a day when we were both out to bring contractors to our house. Our neighbor called to alert me. "There are people measuring your windows and taking pictures of your plumbing," Mrs. Rivera reported. Amanda let them in with her own key. I didn't know she had one. I left work immediately, furious that Amanda had somehow obtained a key to our house. When I arrived, she was in the kitchen with two men in work clothes, discussing potential renovations. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded. Amanda didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. "Just getting estimates for the work I'll need to do. No sense wasting time once the hearing is over. Get out, all of you. Now." I held the door open, shaking with rage. "You can't keep pretending this isn't happening, Drew," Amanda said as she gathered her things. "The sooner you accept it, the easier the transition will be for everyone, especially Lily." After they left, I changed the locks immediately, but the violation of our private space felt impossible to erase. That night, I went through every room, looking for signs of what they had touched, what they had evaluated for replacement or removal. Our home suddenly felt contaminated by their presence. Sarah called with more discouraging news. "The judge assigned to your case is Malcolm Reynolds. He's known for favoring family reconciliation solutions, which often means complicated shared ownership arrangements." "Shared ownership? With people who are trying to steal our home?" "I know it sounds absurd," Sarah agreed, "but you should be prepared for that possibility. Judge Reynolds rarely issues clear-cut victories in family property disputes." The weight of it all crushed down on me that night. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus on even simple tasks. Lily found me sitting in the dark, in the kitchen at midnight, staring at nothing. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked, rubbing sleep from her eyes. I forced a smile for her benefit, just thinking, "Sweetheart, let's get you back to bed." As I tucked her in for the second time, she held onto my hand. "We'll be okay, even if we have to leave, right? As long as we're together?" Her attempt to comfort me, when I should have been the one reassuring her, made my failure feel complete. "Yes, baby. We'll always be okay as long as we have each other." But later, alone in my room, I faced the bitter truth that I was failing at my most fundamental responsibility, providing a stable home for my child. My mental health was deteriorating under the constant stress. I couldn't sleep, could barely eat, and found myself experiencing panic attacks when previously routine bills arrived in the mail, now representing financial burdens I wasn't sure I could bear. The day before the court hearing, my parents called with what they termed a generous final offer. They would allow Lily and me to rent the small guest room in Amanda's house for 6 months while we found another place to live. We would have limited access to the common areas of what had been our home, essentially becoming boarders in the house my grandparents had specifically left to us. This way, Lily won't have to adjust to a completely new environment right away, my mother explained, as if this were a kindness rather than further cruelty. "And you'll have time to find somewhere suitable," my father added. The audacity of their offer left me speechless. They weren't just taking our home. They wanted to demote us to unwelcome guests within it, forcing us to watch as Amanda claimed every room, every memory as her own. "I'll see you in court," was all I could manage before hanging up. That evening, I was mechanically going through the motions of our bedtime routine when I realized Lily wasn't in her room. I found her sitting on the floor of her closet, hunched over her tablet, tears streaming down her face. When she saw me, she quickly turned it off and wiped her eyes. "What's wrong, sweetie? What were you watching?" "Nothing," she insisted, clutching the tablet to her chest. "It's private." It was so unlike her to keep secrets from me that I was immediately concerned. "Lily, if something's upsetting you, I need to know. We don't keep secrets from each other, remember? This is different, she said, her chin lifting in a stubborn expression that reminded me painfully of Jessica. Please, Daddy, just trust me. Torn between respecting her privacy and my parental concern, I reluctantly agreed to let it go. Okay, but if you need to talk about anything, I'm here. She nodded but said nothing more, and went to bed still clutching the tablet. I spent a restless night wondering what additional burden my 8-year-old daughter was carrying alone, and feeling powerless to protect her from the storm that would hit us in court the next day. The county courthouse was an imposing stone building with high ceilings, and an atmosphere of solemn judgment that made my stomach knot with anxiety. Lily sat beside me in her best dress, her small hand gripping mine tightly. My parents and Amanda were seated across the aisle, all three dressed expensively and projecting confidence. Their attorney, Wilson Matthews, was arranging papers with practiced efficiency, while the empty chair beside me represented a painful reality. I had run out of money for legal representation and would be speaking for myself. Sarah had helped me prepare as best she could, but her final words were far from encouraging. Just tell the truth, present the documentation you have, and hope for a fair hearing. Judge Reynolds entered, a stern-looking man in his 60s, with reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. After the initial formalities, Wilson Matthews presented my parents' case with polished persuasiveness. He painted a picture of family property that had never been properly transferred, of verbal agreements that superseded written documents, of parents who simply wanted to ensure fair treatment for both their children. Furthermore, Your Honor, Matthews continued smoothly, the property in question has historically been treated as family property, with multiple generations making contributions to its upkeep and improvement. The plaintiffs simply seek to restore the original intent of equitable family ownership. My parents testified next, each telling a carefully constructed narrative that portrayed them as reasonable people seeking family harmony through fair distribution of assets. My father spoke about family legacy and parental responsibility to ensure equality among siblings. My mother dabbed at non-existent tears while describing how wounded they felt by my refusal to share family resources. When Amanda took the stand, she played her part perfectly, the sympathetic divorcee seeking a fresh start. I just want the same opportunities my brother has had, she said, her voice catching artificially. A home of my own, a chance to rebuild my life. The house is much too large for just Drew and Lily, while I have nowhere permanent to live. She conveniently omitted mentioning the substantial divorce settlement she had received, or the fact that she had voluntarily sold her condo. And what are your plans for the property? Matthews asked. To make it a true family home again, Amanda replied with practiced sincerity. A place where we can all gather for holidays and celebrations, just like when our grandparents were alive. The irony of her statement, when they were literally trying to evict us, made me clench my fists under the table. Lily squeezed my hand, sensing my tension. When my turn came to speak, I felt utterly outmatched. I wasn't a lawyer or a polished public speaker. I was just a father, trying to protect his daughter's home. But for Lily's sake, I had to try. I presented the will, the property transfer documents, tax records showing I had solely maintained the property for 6 years, and photographs of the extensive renovations I had completed. Your Honor, my grandparents were explicit about their wishes. They wanted me to raise my family in their home, continuing a legacy of love and stability. My wife Jessica passed away 3 years ago, leaving me to raise our daughter alone. This house is more than property to us. It's where Lily's mother lived her final days. It's filled with memories we cherish. I described the sudden nature of the lawsuit, coming only after Amanda's divorce, and the previous acknowledgement my parents had signed, recognizing the legitimate transfer of the house to me. I explained how they had been secretly meeting with Lily, telling her we would have to move, creating anxiety for an 8-year-old still processing the loss of her mother. I'm not a wealthy man, Your Honor. I've spent nearly everything I have trying to defend our home. But this isn't about money for me. It's about keeping my promise to my grandparents, and more importantly, providing stability for my daughter in the only home she's ever known. Judge Reynolds listened impassively, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he peered at me over his reading glasses. While your emotional attachment to the property is understandable, Mr. Harrison, family property disputes often require compromise. The court must consider the broader family interests, not just individual preferences. My heart sank. His language echoed exactly what Sarah had warned me about. He was leaning toward some form of family reconciliation that would ultimately mean losing our home. Matthews presented his closing arguments with confident finality, emphasizing the greater good of the entire family and the reasonable accommodation my parents were offering by allowing us to temporarily rent a room in the house after the transfer of ownership. As Judge Reynolds was about to call for a brief recess before announcing his decision, a small voice spoke up from beside me. "Your Honor, can I say something, please?" The judge looked surprised, but not displeased. "And who might you be, young lady?" "I'm Lily Harrison. I'm 8 years old, and that's my house too." Judge Reynolds smiled slightly. "Yes, it is appropriate to hear from all affected parties. You may speak, Miss Harrison." Lily stood, her pink dress making her look even smaller in the formal courtroom. She took a deep breath, and I realized she had prepared for this moment. "Your Honor, can I show you something my dad doesn't know about? It's important." The judge nodded, his interest clearly piqued. "You may." Lily reached into her small purse and pulled out her tablet. "I need to play something. Is that okay?" "Proceed," the judge directed, gesturing for her to approach the bench. As Lily walked forward with her tablet, I noticed my parents exchanging worried glances. Amanda suddenly looked pale, reaching over to grip my mother's arm. "What is this?" I whispered to Lily as she passed. "Trust me, Daddy," she whispered back with surprising determination. Lily stood before the judge, her tablet held carefully in both hands. I recorded some things because nobody was listening to me or Daddy. My teacher, Mrs. Peterson, said sometimes adults forget to listen to kids when they're arguing. She pressed play on the first video, and Amanda's voice filled the courtroom. Of course, the house belongs to Drew. Grandpa was totally clear about that. But Mom and Dad think they can use this legal loophole about family property to get it anyway. Once it's mine, I'm going to sell it immediately. The market in that neighborhood is hot, and I could get at least twice what I'd pay for a condo downtown. The recording continued with Amanda on a phone call, seemingly unaware she was being filmed. "Yeah, I know I told them I want to live there, but that's just to get Mom and Dad on board. They're sentimental about keeping it in the family. They don't need to know my plans until after the papers are signed." Judge Reynolds' eyebrows rose as he looked at Amanda, whose face had drained of color. Lily swiped to another video before anyone could speak. This one showed my parents in what appeared to be their kitchen. My mother was speaking. "We're only doing this because Amanda needs the money from selling the house. Her ex-husband left her with all that debt she's been hiding from everyone. It's not ideal, but what choice do we have? We can't let her financial problems become public knowledge." My father's voice responded, "I still don't like lying about the will. Thomas and Eleanor were crystal clear about leaving the house to Drew. We signed those papers acknowledging it years ago. Well, Wilson says we can claim we were pressured during our grief. No one can prove otherwise." Judge Reynolds' expression had grown increasingly stern. He looked up at my parents, who were now whispering urgently to their lawyer. "Is there more?" he asked Lily. "Yes, sir." She swiped again, revealing a third video. This one showed Amanda in what I recognized as her car, parked outside our house. She was speaking to someone on speakerphone. "The contractors say it needs about $30,000 in repairs before I can list it. But even with that, I should clear enough profit to pay off my credit cards and still have a down payment for the downtown condo. No, Drew has no idea how bad my finances are. He thinks I'm just being greedy, not desperate. Mom and Dad are covering for me, as usual." Lily looked up at the judge. "I have more videos, lots more. I've been recording them whenever they say mean things or lie. They didn't know my tablet could record even when it looks turned off. Daddy taught me about privacy. But Mrs. Peterson also taught us that sometimes you have to stand up when something wrong is happening. The courtroom had fallen completely silent. Judge Reynolds looked at the tablet, then at Lily, then at my parents and Amanda, whose expressions ranged from shock to outrage to fear. "I believe we need a recess to review this evidence properly," Judge Reynolds announced. "Court will resume in 1 hour." As people began to move, I sat frozen in my chair, staring at my daughter in astonishment. She returned to my side, slipping her small hand back into mine. "You recorded them? All this time?" I asked quietly. She nodded solemnly. "They were being mean and telling lies. I was scared the judge wouldn't believe us without proof." "Are you mad at me for keeping it secret?" I pulled her into a tight hug, overwhelmed by her courage and resourcefulness. "No, sweetie, I'm not mad. I'm amazed by you." Across the aisle, my parents and Amanda were huddled with their attorney, all talking rapidly in hushed, urgent tones. Matthews looked particularly disturbed, shooting glances in our direction. During the recess, Lily explained that she had begun recording conversations after overhearing Amanda discussing selling the house. At first, she had been afraid to show me, worried the recordings wouldn't be enough to help or that I would be upset about her eavesdropping. As time went on, she collected more evidence, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. "I remember Mommy always said that truth comes out eventually," Lily said with a wisdom beyond her years. "I just helped it come out faster." When court resumed, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Judge Reynolds had clearly reviewed the recordings thoroughly, and his previously neutral expression had hardened. "In light of the evidence presented, I find significant cause for concern regarding the plaintiff's case," he began. "The recordings suggest not only misrepresentation of facts, but potentially fraudulent intent." Matthews attempted to object, arguing that the recordings might not be admissible, but Judge Reynolds cut him off. "Counsel, I suggest you confer with your clients before pursuing that line of argument. The content of these recordings raises serious ethical concerns that could extend beyond this property dispute." He turned his attention to me and Lily. "Mr. Harrison, did you have any knowledge of these recordings?" "No, Your Honor. This is the first I've seen them." The judge nodded, then addressed the entire courtroom. "Based on the evidence now before this court, I am prepared to make my ruling. In the matter of Harrison versus Harrison," Judge Reynolds began, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "this court finds in favor of the defendant, Drew Harrison." The relief that flooded through me was so intense I felt lightheaded. Lily squeezed my hand tight, her small face breaking into a smile. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the plaintiff's claim is found to be without merit and potentially filed in bad faith. The property at 427 Maple Street is confirmed as the legal property of Drew Harrison in accordance with the will of Thomas and Eleanor Harrison." He adjusted his glasses, looking directly at my parents and Amanda. "The court orders the plaintiffs to pay all legal fees incurred by the defendant in this matter. Additionally, a restraining order is hereby issued, preventing Margaret Harrison, Thomas Harrison, and Amanda Harrison from coming within 100 feet of the property for a period of 6 months." My parents sat rigidly in their seats, their expressions a mixture of shock and anger. Amanda was staring at the floor, her earlier confidence entirely evaporated. "I seldom comment on the personal aspects of cases before me," Judge Reynolds added, his tone softening slightly as he looked at Lily. "But I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the extraordinary courage and resourcefulness of Lily Harrison. Young lady, your dedication to truth and justice is remarkable." Lily beamed up at him. "Thank you, Your Honor." As we left the courthouse, several reporters approached us, having caught wind of the unusual case featuring an 8-year-old's pivotal evidence. I politely declined interviews, wanting to protect Lily from further involvement in adult matters. My parents and Amanda slipped out a side entrance, avoiding both us and the media. The drive home felt surreal. Our home was truly ours again, legally affirmed and secure. As we pulled into the driveway, Lily suddenly looked worried. "Will Grandma and Grandpa hate me now?" she asked. I parked the car and turned to face her. "They're very upset right now, and we'll need to give them some time. But you did nothing wrong, Lily. You told the truth when adults were not being truthful. I'm so proud of you. Will we ever be a family again? We are a family, you and me, I assured her. And someday, when everyone has had time to think about what happened, maybe the bigger family can start healing too. But that will depend on Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt Amanda being honest and making better choices. The next few weeks brought significant changes. My extended family members, now aware of the truth behind the lawsuit, reached out one by one to apologize for their part in the estrangement. My cousin Ryan was the first to call. "I can't believe what they tried to do," he said. "I'm so sorry I doubted you, Drew." My Uncle Steve invited us to dinner, awkwardly but sincerely expressing his regret for pressuring me to give up our home. "I should have asked more questions, instead of just taking your parents' word for everything." There was no communication from my parents or Amanda for nearly a month. Then, a formal letter arrived from my father, acknowledging their wrongdoing but stopping short of a true apology. It was a beginning, though far from the reconciliation Lily hoped for. Amanda moved to Colorado shortly after the court case, apparently taking a position with a real estate firm there. Through family channels, I learned she was required to attend financial counseling as part of her bankruptcy filing, the truth of her dire financial situation having finally come to light. 6 months passed, and life settled into a new normal. The restraining order expired, and my parents tentatively reached out, asking if they could see Lily. I agreed to supervised visits at a neutral location, unwilling to risk further manipulation but recognizing Lily's need for grandparent relationships if they could be healthy ones. Our first meeting was at a community park, tense and formal. My parents seemed smaller somehow, less intimidating than they had been throughout my life. My mother brought Lily a gift, a photo album of family pictures including many of Jessica that I hadn't seen before. "We made mistakes," my father said stiffly, the closest he could come to an apology. "We let Amanda's problems cloud our judgment." "It was wrong," my mother added, her eyes on Lily rather than me. "We know that now. It wasn't everything I might have wished for, but it was a start. For Lily's sake, and perhaps for my own healing as well, I was willing to begin the long process of rebuilding trust, with firm boundaries in place. Throughout the fall and into winter, we focused on reclaiming our home emotionally as well as legally. We repainted Lily's room the sky blue she loved, planted a memorial garden with Jessica's favorite flowers, and resumed our tradition of reading on the porch swing on warm evenings. One Saturday in early spring, as Lily and I were turning the soil in the garden to prepare for new planting, she looked up at the house thoughtfully. "Daddy, do you think Mommy would be proud of us for fighting to keep our home?" I followed her gaze to the window of what had been Jessica's art studio, now Lily's playroom filled with her drawings and crafts, a creative legacy continuing through generations. "I know she would," I said confidently. "She believed in standing up for what matters, just like you did." Lily nodded, returning to her digging with renewed purpose. "I'm going to plant sunflowers for Mommy and blue forget-me-nots for Grandma and Grandpa Harrison." "That's a beautiful idea," I told her, amazed once again by her capacity for forgiveness and growth. As we worked side by side in the spring sunshine, I reflected on the profound lessons of the past year. Our story had been one of betrayal and pain, but also of courage and justice. Through it all, I had learned that sometimes the family we choose and the principles we stand for matter more than blood ties alone. And perhaps most importantly, I had discovered that my greatest achievement wasn't saving our physical home, but raising a daughter with the moral compass and courage to stand for truth, even when adults around her failed to do so. The home my grandparents left us was precious indeed, but the legacy of integrity they instilled was the true inheritance, one that would guide Lily long after buildings had crumbled to dust. Have you ever had to stand up for what's right, even when it meant confronting family? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more real-life journeys of triumph over adversity. And if you know someone facing their own battle for justice, share this with them as a reminder that truth, however delayed, finds its way to light. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the youngest among us teach the most powerful lessons.